Welcome, everyone, to Conversations with the Universe. I hope you are well and I hope you are thriving. Today, I'm speaking with author Rylo Kinn, who is the author of The Dragon's Flute, a dark fantasy novel, which is part of what is becoming a series of novels. And it introduces us to Draconia, a world where humans live side by side with creatures of legend. So Rylo and I met in Victoria, BC at a book signing, and that was fun. And so I'm excited to learn more about Rylo's journey as an author and also to share his work with you. Welcome, Rylo.
Hey, thank you very much.
I'm excited to talk to you about your book. So the first thing I want to ask you is about the birthplace. While every story has its own birthplace, and I understand that your early life has been a big influence on your choice of genre. Do you want to tell us a bit about where you grew up and how that inspired you?
Yeah, I lived a little bit of a different life than most. My dad, he was in a gravel camp. You have to go up Jervis Inlet to Tree Creek. There was a gravel camp that the guys lived in, and next to it was a logging camp. And so he ended up moving us out there, and I was like 3 years old. And so I ended up living in this world with no roads or stores. It was pretty simple. And even to get to school, my mom would drive a jet boat up and down Jervis Inlet to a place called Egmont. And we'd get off on the dock, and that's, where we'd catch the bus. But and then this lifestyle entailed a lot. I We had a deer with two babies come down into our camp area, and we ended up befriending them. We fed the mom, the babies, little snacks and stuff, and it was great. And then mom left and never
Mm,
came back. My dad always thought maybe it was cougar or whatnot.
mm,
And so we ended up raising these baby deer. I got pictures of me with a baby bottle and stuff like that. And it was beyond that, I mean,
Sorry about
we
that.
raised a lot of animals, had dogs, and I'd be up Jervis Inlet, or mom take me to the school bus, and the deer would come on the boat with us. And going into the bus, I'd be all embarrassed because the kids would be all excited, and I'd be like hitting them with my lunchbox, like, get off the bus. And
That's
so,
funny.
yeah, it was awkward. It was different. I was in a society without getting used to being people. I wasn't in society really.
Mm.
So yeah, eventually I would go to school, and it was just different for me. Yeah.
And that, I guess, that immersion in nature and kind of being in solitude quite a bit or being in a different sort of environment must have, I know how that is because that happened to me too. So that must have kind of drawn you into a world of your own.
Exactly. Whether it be the mountainside, the just nature, even whales would come up the inlet, and my mom would be saying her word to describe me would be curious,
Mm.
overly curious, maybe. I would dive in the ocean right off the dock when the whales would go by, and just try to swim close to them. And being mammals, they're pretty harmless to humans. They were really cool, but dad and mom didn't like it too much.
I
The
guess
big
not.
mitts, dad's arm coming and grabbing me by the scruff and pulling me out of the ocean. But yeah, yeah. And so yeah, no, and then getting into society, because eventually we would move into a place called Sechelt. Wasn't very big either, but yeah, I had a hard time going from animals to people. Uh,
Mm.
uh, I think that's when I really discovered in schools and stuff, the library, and I spent a lot of time hiding in there, being me.
Yeah, yeah, again, I can really relate to that being, the
Wonderful.
library is where I discovered worlds different from my own and I could I realized that there was a lot out there that I wasn't experiencing. So,
Yes.
and it's like you say about being curious, that's a really great attribute for a writer because I think that's what really feeds our stories is curiosity. And so, how did you get into the particular genre and when did you start writing this particular?
Um, no, I understand. I was a lot left the whole Jervis Inlet area and was in the
Mm,
schools and stuff. I found myself in a library and reading, and I guess that's the early stages of my love for Merlin,
mm.
Excalibur, Sir Lancelot, King Arthur, and such. But dragons in general, and a ton of other things. Just I just when you just read book after book, and when you read them all, you just kept reading, right?
Yep, yep.
And so I guess as it evolved, I that's where I hid. And then during high school, I started to, really break out of my shell and, started really getting friends and hanging out and really being open. And well, then I landed into the world of a game called Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm,
And from there, I started really creating characters and some of the characters I use in the book today, the Draconia series. I but I mean, if we even go back further, when I was still in Jervis Inlet, the inspiration of the mountains, the everything around the animals, just the ideas. I mean, all I had was my imagination. I didn't go
mm.
to Walmart and get a toy. I had a stick that was shaped closely to something that was a toy. And it was my sword or my gun or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
And that really blew out of proportion when a movie called Star Wars: A New Hope first came out. My
right.
dad, he took us on boat, like I said, to Egmont, where we drove to a ferry, where we went onto another, like it was planes, trains, and automobiles. And
Yeah.
we watched Star Wars. I was 5 years old, and all the stuff around me, my nature, the deer, the everything, the life I live. All of a sudden, I'm in this world of space,
Mm,
and it changed a lot of what I thought and how I felt today. It was a really it's when I really started really thinking about
mm,
stories and stuff. But then forward it in the future, yeah, the Dungeons and Dragons started creating these characters, and as I got into my 20s, I started to really put the stories together. I mean, characters I was creating when I was 5, when I was 13, when I was 16, all these characters I
wow.
just sort of blended together. Star Wars, Merlin, and I was a huge inspired by Stan Lee comics in my teens. I'd be reading every one from Spider-Man to Silver Surfer. The worlds were just huge. And then as I matured, I started getting into Dean Koontz, Stephen King, and then you just got this way of writing, the styles, it's infinite.
Mm,
But I guess Dean Koontz I read most of, but Douglas Adams was the last really big inspiration that I got into. And when I got into
mm,
that world, well, if you read Draconia, you would see what a blend of everything I've ever said is part of it. So
absolutely.
inspirations were pretty deep
Yeah.
and pretty vast. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. So, tell me a little bit about the story so that the readers can and listeners can get an idea of what it is.
Draconia is will be a 5 novel series. It's based on a sorceress named Savita Cosmos and her adopted son, Nightshade. They have huge pasts that will blend through the series to understand why they got together. But it's all about creating family with unusual people. Like it's a very distorted way of looking at the way life is. It should be traditionally, as opposed to where it's creating it as it goes.
Mm,
And it isn't traditional family, but in the end, it shows you that family is very powerful, no matter traditional or not. It's a good storyline for character development and very big on just world building. But yeah, the characters are very intriguing. They're a lot of people relate to them because they're storylines with well what everybody goes through in life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like the beautiful thing about a really good book is when people get invested in the characters. And
Yeah, yeah,
and often I always think that for an author, if you're invested into the characters and you really love the characters and you've put a lot of effort into developing them, then it's often that the readers are also invested into the characters and they can't stop thinking about them. And people start pestering you for book two and book three.
yes. Well, book two is coming out this year, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
For the YouTube people, you want to hold up your book?
Definitely. The
The Dragon's
Dragon's
Flute.
Flute.
And how many pages is it? Because it's a quite a hefty book.
Oh, she's about 513
Yeah.
on this one. The next one's gonna be about 20, 30 pages more.
Mm.
And it's gonna stay that way through the five novels. And
Yeah.
the beginning, it's a the novels have a chance to expand outward, not keep going forward, but outward and prequels
Right.
if people are interested in it, or if that's where it goes, right?
Well, can you
Depends
explain
on
that,
the
what the outward means as opposed to going forward?
outward meaning there's a lot of branches that I made a ability to branch out from book one of the Dragon's Flute,
Yep.
and it will come back into book three, and
Right.
then book four will come. But anything more, I don't want to because it'll just be kind of pushing it too far, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
you know,
no,
like you kind of know what, the life of the story, like how far the story can go. So yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. And then, of course, yeah, no, it's just a fun ride. Like I said, I've been kind of thinking it up my whole life
Mm.
and to fall together as years went by.
Yeah, I think it's really super interesting the life that you've led and the way that you have led the things that you experienced and the things that you've read and then movies that you've seen, that you've allowed all of that to come together in something that you are bringing to the consciousness or to the world that nobody else on the planet could bring because it's all coming out of your experience. So that's what each author brings is themselves, into the story. And
Absolutely.
they, if somebody else tried to write this story, they couldn't because it's not coming from, through them. Do you believe that we channel things or how do you feel about that process?
I believe 100% we channel things. That's what makes the stories that we create. And there's a lot of great authors out there that create a great story just because of their experiences and then one up on it. I don't think I could have done this first book and start the series at a younger age. It
Mm,
took me being the age I'm at to actually be ready to write it.
right.
So it's very reflective on my life and my
Hmm.
experiences. So
Mm,
yeah, the depth goes beyond. It's
yeah.
infinite.
And it
I
comes
mean, I love
through.
writing.
Yeah, and it comes through when it comes through. I know writing my own series, there was a moment in time when I knew that, okay, it's here and I have to put it down because if I don't, it's gonna run
Yeah.
away. And I have to be like willing to sit down and write it, when it arrived, instead of saying, I'm gonna write it like, some other time when I'm more ready, because you're ready when you're ready, like when the story arrives. So
Yes, you never push it.
no, you don't push it for sure. Yeah. What from your experience as a writer, what kind of advice would you give to somebody starting out or about the writing process, or also about honoring yourself as a writer. Because, like people say, oh, you tell people that you're a writer, and they say, oh, what are you writing? And then you tell them, and then, people don't, unless they're writers themselves, they don't necessarily understand what that process is, or
No,
how
no.
much of yourself you're giving.
Yeah.
And it takes
I think
courage even to be able to say I'm a writer.
I think by the end of the day, a writer makes about uh, with the amount of time and effort they put into it. What I would have to say for an upcoming writer, the best thing you can do is gain allies, reach out, become friends with as many writers as you can. There's
Mm,
a lot of everybody helps everybody in the writing industry. You can't do it alone. You can jump into it guns ablazing thinking, well, I wrote a book, I'm going to be a great writer. The truth is there's so many people just like that. Like we all have that, right? So
mm,
unity is the best thing you can do. Be part of all the writing programs, be part of the community, really show your spirit, and yeah, the more people you know, the more people that will advertise you, and like
mm.
versa, you would advertise them, and the better you become, the
Yeah,
stronger of imprint you bring.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel that too, and I love that you said that, because I think writing can be a very lonely kind of road.
Oh, geez, yeah, yeah,
You're in your head,
absolutely.
you're in your head all the time, and you're uh creating, but you're also like self-flagellating and saying, oh, I don't know if this is any good. And it's nice to have community, and
Yes,
it's also
yes,
nice to help other writers.
yes. I mean, it's a good karma in the end too, and it's just how the game works. You have,
Yeah.
believe it or not, social media is such a huge factor, and there's agents, there's publishers, and everybody's watching
Mm,
social media. They're watching for the people that are really respectful, and they want to go out and be something. They're not
mhm.
for the fame or the fortune, which I have no idea where that came from.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to develop the starving artist before you get the fortune, right?
that's right.
And absolute honor and love. If you don't have a love for the craft, you're
Mm,
not going to succeed. The journey is very long. It's a long road. And in order to have the endurance for it, you need to love writing. You need to do it
mm,
because that's what your hobby, that's what your passion is, that's what your desire is. The
mm,
only reason I've succeeded this far is I write, therefore I am.
mhm,
And with that attitude, you're going to go far because in the bottom line, you're not doing this for the money. You're not doing this for the fame or fortune.
mhm,
You're doing this because it's your passion.
mhm.
And guess what? Those are the people that end up succeeding in the end.
Yeah,
So,
I think that maybe sometimes we do, like people do have the idea or the fantasy of what we see on, in movies or on TV.
yes,
The
yes.
writer, they've got their agent, they've got their publisher, they live in a beautiful lake house. They get they get
Yeah,
they get huge advances, and that's all fine and good. Like if that happens, okay, great. But at the same
yeah,
time,
success.
if you like you say, if you don't love it and this isn't part of who you are and that's not what you're here to do, then it's just never going to work. But I have one more question for you about self-publishing. I know that you are like we're all looking for publishers or agents or whatever and hoping that we're going to be um published in the traditional way, but also I have a lot of respect for self-publishing, because I think a lot of voices that are good voices and that are telling great stories don't get picked up, sometimes, or they don't, they don't go that traditional route for whatever reason. And I think that self-publishing has given a lot of people voice that would never ever have had it. And
Hmm.
I started out with being self-published, and I will continue to self-publish even though I do have a publisher.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, because there are certain things that I want to write that I don't want anyone to mess with, you know?
Yes, yes, yeah.
And
Um,
but why did you go with the self-publishing to start out with?
I had a story to convey.
Hmm.
I'm not a cookie cutter style writer. I A lot of people would say otherwise. Some people would argue even that. I mean, I think by creating the argument that I've made something new.
Hmm.
Um, I love what I do and I love the style I'm doing it.
Right.
I will say I would say that every author strives to be published by a publisher.
Hmm.
There is a conflict, right? Like you said, it's nice to have the freedom and to be able to say it without being censored and
Right.
put on some sort of little Disney half-hour skit sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, in the same token, we still strive to be part of the community, published community.
Hmm. Hmm.
And who wouldn't be so worried or concerned about getting some help by professionals that know the field? At the same token, by starting, I don't know, off by self-published and succeeding with it would allow the publisher to want to pick you up and giving you a little bit of leadway or headway. I
Hmm.
know that might be a delusion in my head, but now ultimately, I want to be picked up by a publisher. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like playing the game, but I already got book one out, so they're gonna have to figure that one out.
And it's not really it's not true anymore that publishers aren't interested in self-published authors. They absolutely are. And they are
Hmm.
looking for people who show the commitment to their craft and to like, marketing themselves, et cetera, et cetera. I have a lot of respect for you for writing the story that you wanted to write and that
I
you,
hope so. It's a lot of work.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but also it's a lot of joy as well, like to be able to
Absolutely.
hold that in your hands and say, like I said, nobody else could put out the story that you put out. So I think that's pretty amazing, and I really congratulate you for um,
Yeah.
doing the work that you do. And it's important. It's important that um, art is really important in the world, and this is your art.
That's right.
Yeah,
And even therapeutic.
absolutely.
Writing. Writing has definitely brought me peace. So in the long run, it's a
Mm.
win-win no matter where I go.
Yeah, you feel like it's part of processing our life and our experiences too through our writing.
Yeah, and not even necessarily in the moment.
Mm,
Even 20, 30, 40 years or whatever ago that you're using some of the experience in your stories. It's really reflection in the end,
mhm, mhm.
reflecting on your life. So
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about book two when it comes out. And maybe we can have you back on when that is out. And yeah, so for the people who are listening to this podcast, I'm going to have Rylo's information and his links within the story of the podcast. And then for people who are watching on YouTube, I'm going to have the same information, his bio and his links available as well. So you can go ahead and experience the magic of the dragon's flute.
thank you so much.
Thanks so much for being here, and I really, really appreciate you spending your time with me.
I appreciate being on here. Thank you so kindly.
Thanks, Rylo, and we'll see you again. Thank you for being part of this conversation.
Cheers. Have a great night.